So we'll jump into it. So we're going to start with what is tactics in boccia. So what is strategy versus what is tactics? And this can be defined as a strategy is an overarching plan, and tactics are the specific actions taken to accomplish the strategy. So I guess the key for this is how does this apply to boccia? So tactics in boccia is the application of specific skills against an opponent to execute an overall strategy. So this can include, I guess, specific skills and actions right from the start of a match, or even including in the call box, so such as selecting ball arrangement, obviously shot selection during an end. So in boccia, an athlete will often have an overall game plan or strategy heading into a match, and this is obviously probably determined between the athlete and a coach. And then the athlete then has to make decisions and execute specific skills, which are the tactics, during each end of the match in order to execute their overall game plan. I think it's really important to understand that there is a difference between the strategy and the tactics. The strategy is your overarching plan heading into the match, and then the tactics are the specific skills executed during the match and during each specific end. So basically what we're going to cover in today's webinar is boccia tactics and what influences tactics. So we're going to start with shot selection, and we're going to cover shot terminology. This will include the official World Boccia terminology, the shot selection process, the positioning of an athlete within their playing box, and how this can influence shot selection, and then also shot success ratio. So this is talking about how can we make sure we're playing shots that have a high chance of success of executing the intended outcome. We're then going to move on to looking at athlete tendencies. So these are sort of tactics specific to an athlete. So we're going to look at attacking versus defensive type approaches to strategy and tactics, depending on the athlete and their preferences, the strengths and weaknesses of an athlete, and then also look at ball arrangement and how this influences tactics. And then the final stage of the webinar, we'll look at understanding game flow. So this will talk about understanding the importance of understanding specific match situations, and also understanding specific end situations. And the final part we'll touch on is athlete experience and how this can influence tactics. So we're quickly just going to start on shot terminology to refresh everyone's minds about the World Boccia official terminology. So I won't spend too much time here, but we've got first ball, which is the first ball delivered after the jack. Placement shot, which is the shot played to deliver a ball in a specific area. Push shot, a shot in which the player pushes their own ball closer into a target area. The push off is a shot in which the player pushes opposition ball away from the specific target area. A smash shot, predominantly power shot along the ground, normally used to either open up the jack or completely smash away an opponent's ball or multiple balls. The ricochet, a shot played to rebound off a ball into a scoring zone. Bounce over shot, which is an aerial trajectory shot aimed at bouncing over a barrier ball to reach specific targets. Roll up and over, a shot with the intention of the ball rolling up and over, either into a holding position or into a scoring position. The roll on top, a shot with the intention of playing the ball and it remains on top of another ball or balls. And finally, the lob shot, an aerial shot played to move a target ball by attacking over a ball. I think it's important when we're talking about the shot selection process. So the shot selection process. So the first stage in this is the perception and analysis of the situation, or if we want to put that more simply, basically analyzing the court. So what does it look like out on court? What setup of balls do we have around the jack? And obviously, as an athlete's analyzing this, different options in terms of what shot they want to look to play starts to occur within their mind. So important that the first step in the shot selection process is analysing the court, and this can start while your opposition is playing their shot, and then will start to develop once it becomes the athlete's turn to play. So once we've analysed the court, and we've got a bit of information coming into the athlete's mind around what shots they can potentially play, this is when the mental solution to the problem, or more basically selecting which shot is best for the situation. Now, in any situation or in any given situation, the chances are there's going to be more than one type of shot which can be played. And so this is the part of the process where the athlete starts to look at what the outcome they're looking to achieve is and what shot can achieve this with the highest chance of success. The third part to this shot selection process is the motor solution of the problem. So this is actually executing the selected or intended shot. And this includes the execution of the shot, including the visualization of the shot, and then also executing the technical process. So for throwers, executing the technical process is everything from their setup, their positioning in the box, potentially running through a practice swing. Whereas for BC3s, this might be getting their wheelchair into the correct position at the correct angle, and then instructing their assistant to select the correct ball, put the correct ball at the correct mark, and then being in a position for them to play the shot off the ramp. And then the final stage in the process is basically repeating the process for each shot. So for every shot, the athlete's running through the process of analysing the court, running through in their mind the different options for shot selection in terms of what the outcome is they're trying to achieve, executing the shot, and repeating that process for each shot. So shot selection can be influenced by, so obviously the number of balls you have versus the number of balls your opponent has left. If we've got more balls than our opponent left, so say we have 5 balls, our opponent only has 3 balls left, we can probably look to be a little bit more attacking in order to try and maximize our scoring potential towards the end of an end. Whereas if we have less balls than our opponent, we probably need to start thinking a little bit more defensively in terms of minimizing our opposition's scoring potential towards the end of an end. The types of balls an athlete has left, so if we get towards the end of an end and we find ourselves with harder balls left to play, that's going to limit our ability to the types of shot we can play. So if we're left with harder balls, we're probably looking at more push-on shots, push-off shots, looking to use other balls on court in terms of ricochet shots, or looking at smash shots, those harder balls. Whereas if an athlete is left with softer balls towards the end of an end, they're probably looking to use more placement shots, block shots, or if they can generate the power, you can use a softer ball for a push shot as well, on or push off. Shot selection is also influenced by the score of an end at the given time. So again, if an athlete is in the position where they have 2 balls in scoring position and they're left with softer balls, they may or may not be willing to use those softer balls to try and score more points, and they might be more willing to do that with softer balls rather than harder balls, because there's obviously less chance of them disrupting those 2 scoring balls they had in place. So the ability to be aware of what the score at an end is, or at a certain point. Obviously, the number of ends left or the stage of a match. So if you're in the first end of a match, you're thinking around trying to maximize scoring or minimize scoring. It's going to obviously be slightly different than if you're in the latter stages of a match. If you're in the second end and the athlete's down by 2 or 3 points, your thinking is obviously a little bit different than if you're in the fourth end of a match and you're down 3 points. If it's early in a match, you can probably afford to just slowly chip away at that lead with sort of 1 or 2 points each end. Whereas obviously if you're down by 3 points in the fourth end, you need at least 3 points to take that match to a tie break. So that's going to influence your shot selection well. And then how much of a jack ball you can see. So this is talking about probably more early in a match when an opposition has a ball in place in front of the jack, and we're looking at whether we're playing a smash shot, a push shot, or a placement shot, depending on how much of the jack ball we can see and what we're trying to achieve with that next shot. So we're going to move on to positioning of the athlete in the box. So an athlete's position within their playing box can influence how much of the jack ball they can see, and this influences their decision-making when selecting which type of shot to play. An athlete can use their playing box to create the best angle for the specific shot that they are wanting to play, and it can also create the best angle to block their opponent. So I think it's important to understand that positioning in the box can be used not only to advantage an athlete in playing a shot, but it can also be used to disadvantage their opponent in terms of creating a really good angle to block their opponent, whether that's blocking the jack or blocking their avenue or their access in towards the jack. So positioning in the box can include moving forward and backwards and also sideways. So we're now going to look at an example. So if we look at this example, on the left-hand side, we've got the boccia court, and we've got red players. The red player has played their jack in their first ball, and blue would now be looking to play their first ball. So the question we've asked, and feel free to type an answer into the chat function, which position do you think is best position for an athlete to see most of the jack ball? And the other thing I want you to think about is, in this situation, if we're looking at opening up the jack as the blue player, what position is going to help us to do this? And also, what are the key elements in doing this? So I'll leave you for maybe 30 seconds to a minute for anyone that wants to throw an answer into the box. So we've got green, we've got yellow, and we've got red. Which position out of those three do you think is in the best position to see more of the jack ball? Oh, got a green, 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 lots of green. Perfect. Green, green, obviously, green, 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 green. Perfect. Yeah, so in this situation, green definitely has the best view to the jack, or the most jack ball showing. So on the right-hand side here, we've provided what it would look like from each position in the box. So obviously, red position, you're going to have more of the jack covered, and as we get to yellow, slightly more of it visible, and then in the green position, almost being able to see the total amount of the jack. So I think it's important here to understand that the position in the box we can use to create the angle to see more of the jack. And then the key factor here, and if we're trying to open up the jack from this position, is the fact that if we're playing from the green position, we probably have to use less power to create whatever outcome we're wanting to achieve. We probably have to use less power to achieve that, whereas from the yellow position, we're going to have to use slightly more power, and playing from the red position, we're going to have to use even more power again. So I think the element here we're looking at is the fact that we can achieve the same outcome from each position, but I think in terms of using more or less power from the green position, because we can use less power to achieve that, that's probably more so the desired position. And just finally on this, the key element here is to make sure that when we're playing our shot, we're making sure that our ball is ending up further away from the jack ball than the opposition shot, so that we then have the next shot and can play a placement shot towards a holding position on the jack. So shot success ratio. So when considering shot selection, it is important for an athlete to select the type of shot which gives them a high chance of success in executing the intended shot or outcome. Athletes can use the existing balls on court to, 1, increase the target area, and then 2, increase the shot success ratio. So we're going to use a couple of examples here. So if we look at example 1, in this situation, if we imagine that our opponent has had a ball in front of the jack in holding position, and we've used a smash shot, a strong smash shot, to completely knock the opposition ball away, we now have a target area for our placement shot of 0.5 of a ball, which is indicated by this the blue shadow. So this obviously means that our placement shot to follow is more difficult because our target area for a really high quality placement shot is only 0.5. We now move to example 2. In this situation, if we imagine an athlete has now used a more controlled smash shot and has left the opposition ball in a position which it can now be used, we've increased our target area for our next shot to 1, or 1 full ball. And you can see that's indicated by the pink and blue shadow. So by simply controlling the speed of our smash shot and leaving our opposition ball in a position where it can be used, we've increased our target area, or doubled the target area for our next placement shot, which obviously increases the success ratio of our next shot. So it's really important to understand that we can use existing balls on court to increase the target area and also increase the shot success ratio. So athletes can use existing balls on court to create structures and patterns which increase the shot success ratio. Now, many of you are probably familiar with these structures, and many of you people will probably have different names for these all around the world, depending on where you live and play. But for the purposes of this webinar, we've used wing structure or half wing structure. So the advantages of the wing structure or half wing structure is we increase our target area, and we also make it more difficult for our opponent to smash our ball off once we have our ball in a position. So look at our wing structure. Give you 30 seconds to just have a look at this visual. So we have our jack ball, and then we have a blue and a red ball sort of slightly in front and to the side. This doesn't necessarily have to be 1 blue and 1 red ball. Could be 2 blue balls, could be 2 red balls. But the idea of this is, in this situation, our target area is pretty much 1.5 balls. And if we had to then get a ball into this space between the white, the blue, and the red, we're obviously going to be in holding position, and it's going to be very difficult for our opposition to then smash our ball off. If we look at our half wing structure, fairly similar, except we're only talking about having 1 ball in the position on the side. And again, when we can create our half wing structure, we increase our target area to a full ball width. And again, if we can get our placement shot into the correct position, it makes it a lot harder for our opposition to knock that ball away. When we're talking about creating the wing structure, the key factor to creating the wing structure is using the correct speed or power when playing the shot. So very basically, this is controlling the speed of the shot, using the right amount of power to create or to put the ball into a position where it can be used. When we're looking at creating the wing structure, we have to be aware of the type of ball we're looking to push into that position. So obviously, each ball can have a different hardness. So we're talking about, we could have a super soft ball, a soft medium ball, or a medium ball. So we need to be aware of what ball we are actually looking to push into position. And then we also need to be aware of what ball we are using to perform the shot. So if we're looking to push a super soft ball into a position, we're going to have to use a different amount of power than if we're looking to push a soft or a soft medium ball into position. So we need to be aware of that. And then we also need to be aware of whether we're using, say, a soft medium ball or a hard ball or a super hard ball to actually perform the shot. And that's going to influence how we control the speed of that shot. So when we're talking about controlling the speed of the shot, the more open the jack, or the more of the jack ball that the athlete can see, generally the less speed is required to create the wing structure or the half wing structure. The same principle applies when we're using a push shot to create the wing or half wing structure. So I think it's important there to understand that we can not only create half wing structures when we are looking to smash an opposition ball off, but we can also push our own ball, or we can push existing balls into a position which creates that half wing structure. And then again, remember that the athlete can use their position in the box to increase the amount of the jack ball that is open. And again, this increases the chance of successfully creating that wing structure. So those wing and half wing structures are the type of patterns that athletes be looking to create on court to increase the shot success ratio of the shot they're looking to play, and also to make it harder for the opposition to then knock their ball off. So down the bottom here, we've got a few examples of a ball that's pretty much covering 100% of the jack. We're probably going to have to look to use more power to open this up, or to successfully create that half wing structure. And then as our jack becomes more and more open, we probably need to control that speed a little bit more and reduce that power to be able to push that ball into the position that we need. So if we move on now to athlete tendencies. So an athlete's tendencies are the strategies and tactics they choose to implement and execute most often. So again, this can be sort of everything from ball arrangement to shot selection to jack position. So if we look at what the tendencies may include, ball arrangement, again, most athletes are going to have a sort of preferred ball arrangement they look to use generally, and then ball arrangement will be customized from there depending on their opponent, or depending on who they're playing, and how the court that they're playing on may be running in any certain competition. An athlete's tendencies can include their preferred jack position, and this can be the length or the direction. So some athletes are going to prefer to play shorter, some are going to prefer to play longer. This is going to be influenced by their physical characteristics. And also some athletes prefer to play on a sharp angle out towards the sideline, where some athletes might prefer to play more mid-court or in a central position. And then shot selection, again, athletes are going to have some sort of preference around which types of shot they play more often. For example, for a thrower, when they're looking at trying to remove an opposition ball away from the jack, some athletes may prefer to play the smash type shot, which is the ball rolling along the ground. Or some athletes at certain distances may prefer to play a lob shot, because the effect of a lob shot in opening up the jack is more effective than a smash shot, for example. So athletes' tendencies are influenced by, and I think this is really important to understand, so an athlete's physical characteristics. So an athlete's physical characteristics, or the characteristics of the athlete's impairment, has a huge influence on this. So it obviously impacts their method of propulsion. So for example, a thrower who has an overarm method of propulsion is probably more likely in general to want to play to either sort of mid-court or longer ends over shorter ends. And an overarm player might be able to do that in two ways. One, they can simply throw their jack to a longer position. Two, they might be able to move further back in their bot to allow them to have that extra room to play the jack slightly longer. When we're talking about physical characteristics, we can also talk about strength and trunk control. Trunk control, that can influence the ability for an athlete to be able to line up at a shorter distance or at a sharper angle. And all of these characteristics have an influence on where an athlete is going to prefer to play based off their sort of physical profile. Tendencies can be influenced by whether a player has an attacking or defensive approach to strategy and tactics. And we'll get into that more when we look at our ball arrangement. But attacking and defensive approach has a lot to do with the ball arrangement that an athlete selects. Is the athlete a risk taker, or are they more comfortable playing the high percentage shot? And each athlete will naturally have a tendency to be probably more attacking or more defensive experiences and their physical profile again. And also athlete experience, so the past successes and failures of an athlete, which is basically what's worked for them in the past and what hasn't worked for them. And athletes learn lessons off these successes and failures that help them then move forward in the future. So if we look at strengths and weaknesses of an athlete, so a coach and athlete must understand their own strengths and weaknesses and implement tactics and a strategy which complements their strengths and minimizes their weaknesses. So if we're talking about the strength, an athlete may, so if we're talking about strength, an athlete who has really good, I guess, trunk control and mobility might look to play on a sharper angle, given that their ability to line a shot up versus their opponent is seen as a strength. So this can be prevalent in BC3s. A BC3 with good trunk control can use their box to find really sharp angles which their opponent might not be able to. And if we're talking about exposing an opponent's weakness, this might be playing a longer jack based off the knowledge that your opponent struggles to throw softer balls past a certain distance, for example, 6, 7, 8 meters. So even though our preferred jack position might not be a long jack position, we understand that if our opponent struggles to throw soft balls past 6, 7, 8 meters, we can then minimize the impact of those softer balls by playing a long jack position and exploiting that weakness of our opponent. And I guess the key message here is a coach and athletes should not compromise their own strengths or expose their own weaknesses in an attempt to simply exploit their opponent's weaknesses. There is that fine balancing act between we want to be exposing or exploiting our opponent's weaknesses if we can, but we don't want to be compromising our own strengths or exploiting our own weaknesses simply to try and play to an opponent's. So ball arrangement. So ball arrangement is important. It's important that an athlete's ball arrangement accommodates their strategy and tactics. So this is a really important message, is that whatever the strategy and the tactics of the athlete, the ball arrangement accommodates this. But it's also important to remember that the athlete's ball arrangement will be influenced by the physical characteristics of the athlete. And the strategy and tactics need to accommodate the athlete's physical profile. So there's very little point in selecting a strategy and tactics that the athlete, based off their physical profile, is then unable to implement or execute. So it's a balance of the two. It's ball arrangement that accommodates the strategy and tactics, but also understanding the physical profile of an athlete and what tactics and what ball arrangement they need based off this physical profile. So we'll very quickly look on the left-hand side of this slide. We have our types of balls and the purpose. It's important to understand that the purpose associated with each of these ball types doesn't mean that a certain ball type can't be used for a different kind of shot. This just gives a general idea of what each ball can be used for. So a super soft ball used for first ball and placement shots. A soft ball used for a first ball, a placement shot, and a push-on shot. A soft medium can be used for a push-on, push-off, and ricochet. A medium ball used for push-on, push-off, and a weak smash shot. And then our hard and super hard balls, or hard ball used for push-off and smash, and a super hard ball used for a strong smash. Again, it's important to understand that, for example, a soft medium ball, some athletes will still use this to play placement shots, and type of ball used for a specific purpose will again be influenced by the physical profile of an athlete. For example, an athlete with limited strength or power, they may then have to use your sort of soft or your soft medium ball for the purpose of a placement shot, given they have reduced power. So to reach those longer jack distances, they need harder balls to reach those distances. So we look at a balanced throwers ball arrangement, and we have one super soft, two soft medium, and one medium. So this gives them the opportunity to have three balls for either first ball and placement shots, and then three balls for shots to do with pushing, push on, push off, and smashing. And if we look to what we'd call a balanced BC3 ball arrangement, one ball of each type. So again, this gives them a range to be able to play each different kind of shot. But again, ball arrangement is a very individual aspect to boccia, and it's very much based off the individual's physical profile and the tactics they're looking to implement. So if we now move to a couple of examples, and these are just examples of different setups an athlete may choose. Again, it's a very individual choice ball arrangement based off the athlete's preferences. If we look at a defensive thrower, so a defensive thrower, they may look to include an extra soft ball for the purpose of having extra balls to be able to play placement shots and potentially block shots. Where if we compare this to an attacking thrower, they may actually use, down here where it says medium, that should say 2. So they may add in an extra medium ball, and that gives them an extra ball for the purpose of being able to play push-ons, push-offs, or smash shots in order to just manipulate the jack and the balls that are on court a little bit more. If you're a defensive thrower or a defensive player, you're looking to include an extra soft ball to allow you to play those placement or block shots, where your more attacking thrower is adding in an extra hard ball to allow you to play those push-on, push-offs, and smash shots. And here we're just looking at a simple alternative BC3 ball arrangement. So here they've got 2 super soft, 2 soft medium, and 2 hard balls. Again, this setup still allows the athlete to play all different kinds of shots, but it just gives a little bit more consistency in terms of, okay, both my placement balls are super soft, so within their calibration setup within their ramp, there's a little bit more consistency there. Both their both their sort of push-on, push-off balls are soft mediums. Again, a little bit more consistency in understanding the calibration system within their ramp, and then a hard and a super hard ball for your smash shot. Again, ball arrangement, very individual aspect of the athlete, but it needs to fit their physical profile and also accommodate the tactics and strategy that the athlete is trying to implement during a match. Understanding game flow. So understanding the match situation. So an athlete's tactical decision-making will be influenced by the current match situation at any given point throughout a match, and therefore is important for an athlete to be continually aware of the match situation and certain parts, which include, so what end is it and how many ends are left in the match. Again, we spoke about this earlier. If we're in the first end of the match compared to the fourth end of the match, our decision-making and our tactical decision-making is going to be different. Obviously, if it's early in the match and we find ourselves down by 2 or 3 points, it's not so urgent to get a big chunk of points back straight away, and we can look to chip away at sort of 1 or 2 points per end. Whereas if we're in the fourth end of the match and we find ourselves down by, say, 3 points, the urgency to be able to get all 3 of those points back is immediate, and therefore we might have to adopt a more attacking mindset in order to try and chase those points we need. What the score is, again, that links into what end is it, and just understanding what the score is and the urgency in order to chase those points, and whether we need to adopt an attacking or defensive mindset. Who has the jack in the next end? So this is important because, again, it changes our tactical decision-making in terms of, if we know that we have the jack for the next end, we're probably a little bit more confident in being able to secure points, or more confident in our ability to pick up extra points on our own jack as opposed to our opposition's jack. So just knowing, keeping in mind and understanding who has the jack in the next end. Also keeping awareness around how many points does an athlete need to win the match and also force a tiebreak in. So if we're getting towards the end of the match, it's important to keep in mind that an athlete doesn't necessarily need the number of points to win the match, but if they can secure the amount of points to force a tiebreak, that the minimum amount of points we need is the amount to force the tiebreak. So it's important to understand the difference between the number of points to win a match versus the number of points to force a tiebreak, and then weighing up risk reward versus, do we go for a slightly risky shot to try and win a match, or do we settle and move towards a tiebreak? And again, that'll depend on the difficulty of the shot and how risky it is, but weighing up that risk reward. And this one here is a little bit more, getting a little bit more technical, but keeping or having an awareness of what points difference do I need to advance out of the pool stage. So in a competition style format, an athlete understanding might be going into the last pool match, understanding what they need to do to be able to advance out of the pool stage. So the first outcome might be they need to win the match. The second outcome then might be, okay, I need to beat my opponent by 3 points or 2 points. So obviously the first outcome is win the match, and then the second outcome beyond that is how many points do I need to win by to make sure that I advance out of the pool stage. Understanding match situation, again, is important because it can allow an athlete the opportunity to try new tactics in game without negatively impacting the result of a match with their competition. So an example here would be an athlete going into the fourth end who has the jack, finds himself up by 6 or 7 points. They understand that they can't lose the match, so they might be now willing to implement a new tactic they've been trying in training into a game situation without the risk of negatively impacting the match score or their progress within a competition. So having that understanding of the match situation can allow you to try those new tactics without the risk of impacting the result of the match or the competition. Understanding specific end situations. So this is Again, similar to understanding that of the match situation, but an athlete's tactical decision-making will be influenced by the situation at any given point throughout an individual end. Therefore, it is important for an athlete to continually be aware of the specific end situation. So again, this includes who is holding shot, how many balls does an athlete have versus how many balls does their opposition have remaining. We talked about this earlier as well. If an athlete has more balls left than their opponent, they can afford to be a little bit more attacking in an attempt to maximize their scoring potential. If they have less balls left than their opponent, they're probably looking to be a little bit more defensive in order to minimize the scoring opportunity for their opponent. Being aware of first of all, what type of balls your opponent has. So what is your opponent's ball arrangement, having an understanding of that, and then being aware that as an end develops and as your opponent plays each ball, understanding what types of balls your opponent has left, as this has some influence on the types of shot they can play towards the back end of an end. So if our opposition is left with softer balls towards the end of an end, you can probably understand that they're going to be looking to play more placement shots, and maybe if they have good power, push-on shot, push-off shot. Whereas if they have harder balls left, know that they're probably going to be looking to use existing balls on court to help increase the success ratio of their shots. So they'll be looking at more push-on, push-off, ricochet, and smash shots. It's really important to have an understanding of, first of all, what our opponent's ball arrangement is heading into a match, and also making sure our athletes are being aware of what balls their opponent has left as they play each ball. And also how many scoring balls are in position, because towards the end of an end, either our athlete or our opponent is going to have the last ball. So it's important to understand what the situation is in terms of who's in scoring position. Can we capitalize on potentially scoring more points, or are we trying to minimize how many points our opposition scoring in a particular? So understanding the specific end situation can allow an athlete to minimize the scoring opportunity of their opponent, or to maximize the scoring opportunity for themselves in a particular end. Minimizing the damage and or maximizing your own scoring in a particular end can be the difference between winning and losing a match. You've probably all been in a situation watching an athlete where potentially one good, or when we look back at a match, one good or one bad end either wins or loses the match. And this is where we're talking about trying to be able to maximize that scoring potential or minimize the scoring damage conceded in the end. And if we can do that, that one end goes a long way to either winning or losing the match. So we're getting towards the end of the webinar now. So our last part is around athlete experience. So an athlete's tactical decision-making during an end and throughout a match will be influenced by their past experiences of success and failure. So athletes will try to replicate decision-making and tactics which have led to past successes, and will try to avoid decision-making and tactics which have led to past failures. So obviously when we're talking about athlete experience, the more experience an athlete has, the more successes and failures they will have to learn from and to call on. And they often try to learn from these experiences, successes and failures, to help decision-making and the tactics moving forward. So the example we're going to use here is, on the left-hand side, we have an example from the World Champs in 2018. So we have the BC3 individual final from the World Champs in Liverpool. So we had athlete from Korea playing red and athlete from Greece playing blue. So red leads by 3 points heading into the fourth end. And obviously the blue player is chasing points and decides to play a long end, even though their preferred jack position is probably a lot shorter. They realize that I'm down by 3 points, I'm chasing some points, so they've decided to play long. And in this end, blue scores 4 points and wins the match 6-5. On the right-hand side, we have the Paralympic Games, which took place this year, which were fantastic. Same situation. We have so we have the BC3 pairs gold medal match. So we have Korea versus Japan. Now the correlation here is that the same Korean athlete from the World Champs in Liverpool is actually playing in this pairs match for Korea here. So red leads by 3 points heading into the fourth end. Again, the blue player realizes that they're chasing points towards the end of the match. So they decide to play their jack ball long, and you can see from the pictures, their jack balls are played in pretty similar positions. So in these both situations, both the individual blue player on the left and the pair from the right, their usual jack positions were a lot shorter than this, but they realized in this situation they're chasing points, so they'll push their jack position longer. And in the situation on the right, blue scored 3 points to force a tiebreak. Japan actually didn't end up going on to win the tiebreak, but they were able to force a tiebreak by using that long jack position. And there's no doubt that Japan would have had some insight as to what had happened at the World Champs in Liverpool when applying this tactic to the Paralympic Games this year. And again, that comes from that experience of being involved in big competitions and in big matches at big competition. So my final thought for you guys to go away with. So the great thing about Boccia is there is no right or wrong tactics. And I encourage you all to be as creative, coaches, athletes, to be as creative as possible. But the one key thing to remember with tactics is tactics can be developed in theory and be as imaginative and creative as possible. Tactics must then be demonstrated and proven on court during training and competition.